Good morning, participants, and good afternoon to those of you in a different time zone. Welcome to this webinar, National Reporting under the Basel Convention for 2019. I would like to start by thanking Dan for the technical support, and you can contact him during the webinar in case you have any further connectivity issue. The objective of this webinar today is to provide you with an overview of national reporting under the Basel Convention. It is an introduction to what you need to report and how to submit the report, but we will not be going into in-depth detail about the contents of the national report. Instead, at the end of the presentation, we will provide you with a list of resources that you can consult in case you need further information. In addition, you can contact the Secretariat at any moment in case you need assistance on any aspect of national reporting. So, the requirement to report is mandated by Article 13 of the Basel Convention. This article specifies the type of information that needs to be transmitted. In addition, the COP, the Conference of the Parties to the Basel Convention, has made decisions about other types of information that it would like to have submitted through the national reporting mechanism. The responsibility of submitting a national report lies with the focal point of the Basel Convention, and this is specified in the Convention itself. The reporting performance by parties is reviewed annually by the Implementation and Compliance Committee of the Basel Convention. This exercise looks at the completeness and the timeliness of national report submission by parties. And you can find more information about this process on the website of the Convention, but this is just to say it's a process that is intended to help party report. And for some parties, there is a compliance plan whereby these parties can get help in submitting the national report. The information provided in the national report is really important for assisting parties in implementing the prior informed consent procedure that is at the core of the Basel Convention. And it's also the submission of the national report is a way for the COP to track progress parties have made towards fulfilling the requirements of the Convention. But in addition, this information helps the COP and its subsidiary bodies in decision-making in various ways. On this slide, I've listed a few recent examples that you may have heard about. One is the evaluation of the strategic framework for the implementation of the Basel Convention. This is work that's now being completed by an intersessional working group, and its work relied heavily on data provided through the national report. In addition, there's an expert group on the review of annexes that's looking now at revising or possible revision of Annex 4 to the Convention. And for its work, it used the national report to undertake an analysis of how parties use the codes in Annex 4 in the notification procedure. Beyond this, the information in the national report is used for awareness raising. So the Secretariat recently published a report called Waste Without Frontier that makes use and provides trends about the generation of hazardous waste and other waste, and also the transboundary movements of such waste. Finally, I'd like to highlight that the information provided is useful for monitoring the achievement of Sustainable Development Goal 15. So this is to say that the information you provide just doesn't sit in a database, but it is really used dynamically for various purposes. because this is a question that many parties ask. What is this information useful for? Now let's turn to what the content of the national report. The questions of the report was adopted in a format that was last revised by the Conference of the Parties in 2016. The most recent revisions to this format were made in 2008 at the 14th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, and they are effective for reporting for 2018 and onwards. As part of these revisions, what has been done was to clearly indicate for each question what is the convention article or COP decisions that underlie each of these questions. And concurrently, there was clearly marked the questions that were non-mandatory for reporting, which means there are some questions that parties are obligated to answer, but there are others that are optional. The electronic, this format has been transposed into a questionnaire that's available online and that's to be submitted through an electronic reporting system. I will turn to this electronic system in a few slides. And then I'd like to remind you that parties have to submit a report on the previous calendar year before the end of each calendar year. So for the report for 2019, the deadline for reporting is 31 December 2020. Here are some highlights of the reporting questionnaire. It contains 7 questions and 9 tables. Some of the questions, as shown here, are really contain information that have to be filled once or by parties that report. Of course, it has to be updated as every year, possibly, because changes happen in policy, regulations at the national level. But these are not questions that have to be regularly filled unless there are changes. And so, for example, restrictions on transboundary movements that a party may have are usually decided by policies and regulations, and unless you have a change in those, you don't need to update your report. On the other hand, there are information that has to be provided on an annual basis, and these information are contained in tables 4 to table 9. In particular, parties have to report on export and import of hazardous waste and other waste that happen every year. And this is part of the report where a lot of data is provided on a regular basis, especially by countries that have trade in these wastes. How do you complete and submit a national report? So this is what I have mentioned before. The reporting format has been transposed into an online questionnaire. And this online questionnaire has to be completed by the focal point only. The report, once completed and submitted, is publicly available. And it's important to note also that it's only available on the website of the convention in read-only mode. So this is a question that we regularly receive from focal points, is that once they submit their report, sometimes they want to make some changes and they no longer can access it. And that's because it's only accessible in read-only mode, as I've just explained. But if you have changes you would like to make, you can always contact us after you've submitted a report, and we have administrative rights to the electronic system, and we can make those changes for you. So it's not that you cannot make changes, it's just you cannot make them through the electronic reporting system yourself. What happens to the report after you submit it? The Secretariat undertakes quality control in particular on some of the information, the quantitative information that I've just highlighted. And the reason for this is that this information is then entered in a reporting database so that it's accessible for further analysis, some of which I've explained before. For example, on looking at trends in the use of codes in Annex 4, then we need consistent and harmonized data for all countries across years. And so we do some quality control to ensure that we have quality data for such analysis. And you will receive an email from the Secretariat asking you for some clarifications in case there are anything that isn't clear, of course. To access the electronic reporting system, you go to the dedicated webpage for this system, and at the bottom of the page, you will find a link to the latest report that is available for completion. So just recently, last Friday, the report for 2019 was made available. But you will also find there links to reports for prior years. So if you haven't provided a report for the year 2014 or 16, you can still do that. And in fact, the Implementation and Compliance Committee does its work retroactively. So it looks at reports not that has been submitted now, but it will look at reports that has been submitted in prior years. Right now, it's looking at 2016 and 17 reports. So there's still time for countries to submit their report even after the deadline. To access this, the national report template or the online questionnaire, as we call it, you have to have a login and a password. And this information is made available to the focal point for the Basel Convention, who is responsible for submitting the report. So if you're the focal point, you should have received an email with that information. At some point, though, if you have lost that email or you, for some reason, haven't received it, there is a function on this web page, the ERS web page, where you have an account recovery functionality. So you just have to click on it, and the credentials should be sent again to you as the focal point. We sometimes get questions from countries because they use this feature and they don't receive any email. And the reason is that the system sends the credentials to the email that we have on file for the focal point. And so it's important that if there's a change in the focal point, which happens rather often in some countries, then the Secretariat is informed as soon as possible. Otherwise, the information will not go to the right email. Here are some of the key features of the National Reporting Online Questionnaire. Once you enter the system, you will see on the left side a menu, a bar, that allows you to navigate between all the questions and the pages of the national report. At the top of the page, you always have access to a menu bar that gives access to some functionalities. And then, of course, you have the main area corresponding to each page and each question of the national report, where you fill in the data. The questionnaire contains several options to provide an answer, depending on the question, of course. So you can have multiple choice with conditionality. So here, if you press yes, you will have the subsequent questions appear. If you click no, these won't show. Then, for providing answers, in some cases, you provide free text. Or, if you prefer, you can upload a file to provide that information. as explained, there are some parts of the questionnaire where you have to provide quantitative data. And there are several options for doing that, especially for Table 4 and 5, which for some countries involves a lot of data entry. For most tables, you have the option of doing what we call line-by-line entry. So when you click on add a line or add a record, you will have a drop-box menu where you just select the relevant parameter, and then you enter your information for each of these parameters. And so if you just have a few lines, that's quite easy to do. Actually, if you have many, and some countries for Table 4 and 5 have hundreds, if not thousands of lines, then that becomes very tedious. So what we have done is we've created a functionality that allows this country to import that data into the table. Okay. And so this feature is available for Table 4 and 5. As I've explained at the top of the page, you have access to several functionalities. You have some buttons that allow you to navigate between pages, previous page or next page. You also have a button that allows you to save changes. So you don't have to complete the national report in one go. You can come back to it several times until you're ready to submit. You're also able to download the report as filled as a Word document. And I think that is useful for many parties who have to consult with many departments or seek clearance or authorization before submitting the national report. And that's why this was created, because the ERS credential is usually accessible only to the focal point. And of course, we ask you not to share it with too many people, because we have to be sure that this report is submitted by the focal point. So you have this downloadable file for sharing and seeking consultation. Another feature that can be useful is check for errors. This is one that flags on every single page when you press it, that flags questions that may be incomplete or invalid. So I say maybe because the alerts that appear are not foolproof. That means in some questions you may have multiple options, and if you fill out one option, you might still have an alert. But it's just because the system sometimes doesn't differentiate between the various options. But if you have filled one of these options, then it's no longer necessary to fill other options. However, these alerts can be very useful in case you've forgotten to complete a question. Note that these alerts in no way prevent the submission of the report. So in some cases, some countries have alerted us to this problem. And if it does happen with you, it's a bug in the system. So please do contact us and we will help you resolve it. Now, something else I have to highlight is when you press Save Changes, you will see that the system will highlight all the questions for which you may have incomplete or invalid answers. Then it's easy for you to go to these individual pages, click on Check for Errors, and again, take a look at whether you have forgotten or to fill in a question. On this slide, I've highlighted some of the elements that you should pay attention to. The national report for the questions, and for the tables up to Table 3 are pre-filled with information, the latest information available to the Secretariat. And this is because, as I discussed earlier, these are the type of information that do not change every year, right? So to help parties, to make it easier for them to fill this report, rather than having to fill the same information every year, the questions are pre-filled. However, you have to check and verify that the information is still valid. And if there are any changes, you should then, of course, update this information. Turning to Table 4 and Table 5, I've also explained that we've included a feature that allows you to import data to the tables. And by import, I mean you upload the file to the system, and you click on upload file, and the information appears in the system. Now, for this feature to work, it's important to use the template that is provided for that purpose on that page within the system. And there's also a document showing some validation rules for the data. And it's very important to follow these rules, otherwise this information cannot be imported. And the reason behind this is, as I've explained, some level of harmonization is needed. And also, this is an electronic system, so it only recognizes certain types of information. And unless you provide the information in those requested formats, the system cannot recognize it. So please look at the validation rules and make sure that you format or apply provide the data as requested. Now, what we have done this year, and this is a new feature, we have provided an Excel template for tables 7, 8, and 9. Because in the past, you were provided with the option of uploading a file rather than filling out the table. But there was no template. And in subsequent analysis, for example, of Table 9, that has been undertaken under work by the Implementation and Compliance Committee, it was realized that the information uploaded was provided in a format that was different than specified in the table. And that makes analysis quite difficult. So what we've done now, we've provided this template, and we invite parties to use this template if they want to upload a file instead of doing line-by-line entry into the tables. However, I'd like also to flag, because this can be a source of confusion, that for 7, 8, and 9, for these tables, it is not possible to import these Excel files. So for table 4 and 5, you're able to import, but not for tables 7, 8, and 9. So this is just so that you don't get frustrated when you reach these tables and you think this feature should also be possible. It's something we aim for in the long term, but it's not yet available. Now, once you've completed the national report, you've filled in all the fields that are appropriate for you, you have to go to the last page in order to be able to submit the report. There's a button in the top bar called Submit the National Report, and it only appears in the last page. And once you're ready, you click on this page. When you do that, there will be the system will alert you to all the pages that may contain empty, incomplete, or invalid answers. As explained before, you can then go to these pages, click on Check for Errors, and see if you haven't forgotten anything. And once you've done that, please press on Submit the National Report again, and if there's no bug, then you should be able to submit the report. So this was just a quick tour of the national report and how to submit it. But of course, there's a lot of information to be provided, and you have to understand the requirements of the convention in order to provide this information appropriately. So we provided a few resources for you to further study in case you need to. Here on this page, you can look at the revisions to the reporting format for 2016 and onwards. And this is just so in case you need to fill your 2015 report, and you will see that the format for 2015 and prior years is different than the format for 2016 and onwards. And as I've explained, there have been slight modifications adopted in 2018, and so these new questions then are only available for that reporting year and onwards. It should be noted that the report, the national report in the electronic reporting system, is made available only in English because it's too resource intensive to have it in audio and languages. However, the COP has adopted a manual for completing the national report that contains the questions in all languages, or to say that the manual is available in all languages and it contains the national report. So by referring to this manual, we hope it will help you understand better the information provided in English in the electronic reporting system. There is also available a manual on how to use the electronic reporting system that explains in more detail some of the elements that I have quickly gone through during my presentation. And both of these manuals are available on the website shown on this slide. Then, of course, there are a number of guidance and manuals that have been developed about the obligations of the Basel Convention and the implementations. And some of these are listed here. I'd like to highlight the recent one that has been prepared by the Implementation and Compliance Committee, and it provides some illustrative examples of what the answers to the national report could look like. So this is called the benchmark report, and you will also find this and all these other documents listed here on this website. In closing, I'd like to remind you that the report for 2019 is due by December 2020. And if you have any questions, whether it's on the electronic reporting system, on submitting the report, or even on the content, you're unclear about certain aspects, please do not hesitate to contact me at the address shown on this slide. Thank you for your attention.